Hey everyone, this is Jack from the Cardboard Herald, and today we are taking a look at the prototype for FlickFleet, a game by Eurydice Games coming to Kickstarter soon. This is a fast-flying dexterity game in which you and one other opponent are going to be flicking payloads of polyhedral explosives at one another, trying to crush each other like the rebel scum they are. But there's a degree of mechanical panache and finesse that you might not otherwise expect from such a fast-playing two-player dexterity game. So, this is a prototype review. Everything in it is subject to change, but that said, this seems like a pretty complete game at this point. So with that said, let's go ahead and get flicking with friends with FlickFleet by Eurydice Games. While there's several different scenarios in FlickFleet, ranging from traditional tabletop free-play skirmishes to training competitions to dueling while under the gravitational pull of an imploding star, the basic structure of the game is that you have your ships, your opponent has theirs, and you each take turns activating one ship at a time by resolving two separate actions until all ships have been activated in a round. Rounds continue until the game mode's victory condition is met, usually blowing up each and every last one of your opponent's ships. There's several types of ships in this game, but they mainly fall into two categories. You have the capital ships that are like these bad daddies here that relate to their consoles that have all these different discs denoting what sort of actions that they can take, and if they take damage in certain ways, then they lose certain functions from those ships. And then the other type are the non-capital ships. We'll call them lowercase ships. These are your fighters and bombers that can either start and play, or they can actually be deployed from capital ships if they're loaded up in their fighter bay. And these guys, they don't have consoles that represent what they can do. They can only move and shoot. And the amount of shots that they can take is equal to the number of interlocking parts that they have, and as they take damage, they lose pieces of their ship, making them less offensive, but also harder to hit. And speaking of shooting, shooting in FlickFleet is done completely with dice, either a 10-sider for the more common blasters or a 6-sider for the more accurate and more devastating bombs. To fire, a die is placed on top of the acting ship, then you flick it, hoping against all hope that it touches the intended target. As long as the dice doesn't roll off the table, which indicates a misfire, the first ship touched by the die is hit. There's a whole system in place for how damage is applied. For lowercase ships, they just lose a layer and keep on trucking, though significantly smaller and less powerful on future turns. For capital ships, depending on their dice roll, they may lose shields or have to remove a disc from their console, or maybe even the hull will deflect the brunt of the attack. There ain't no deflecting bombs, though. But if a die damages a section of the ship that has no discs to lose, sayonara, capital ship. A huge factor in dexterity games on what can make or break the entire game is the components that you're actually dexterity-ing. And fortunately, in this regard, FlickFleet rocks. So they have these fat acrylic pieces that have the sleek elegance of a meeple, but they really glide across a table, which is a good thing to have in a dexterity game. Also of note, I really dig that the ships themselves, except for the sleek fighters here, they have a back and a front, which means you actually have to push from the rear of the ship. That gives a degree of orientation to the whole thing and a little bit of skill involved in how you position things around for the short, light sort of gameplay that it's going for. And speaking of flicking things around, we need to get to these guys here. Unlike many of my favorite dexterity games, you aren't really dealing with precision instruments here. Not only are you having to contend with the small but significant drop-off from the ship to the table, but dice roll in strange and often unpredictable ways. But you know what? You start learning how to control it. You get better. You will start positioning your ships in certain ways, making shots that you couldn't before. And yeah, more skilled players will do better, but there is just the right amount of unpredictability, meaning that if you are on the losing end, you can still hope for a fortunate reprieve or a lucky strike. One of my absolute favorite systems in FlickFleet is the way that damage is dealt. So like I said earlier, when your capital ships take damage, then you may end up losing out on your shields, or you may even lose out on the discs that will be capabilities to regenerate those shields, or even move, or even fire back it makes for a cool system where you're having to judge how you want to spend your actions, because you can spend actions to repair your different bays inside of your capital ships. But actions are precious in FlickFleet with only 2 actions per ship per round. And similarly, with the fighter and bomber ships, as they're getting damaged, you have to start worrying about, do I want to skirt them back to use them as defensive positions? Do I want to save them for later use? Or do I just want to put them in the middle of the field and start attacking as much as possible, regardless of whether they're going to get blown up this turn? And because on the capital ships, they take damage based off of what number was rolled on the die, it makes for a degree of unpredictability that means that you're going to be evaluating both what your opponents are capable of doing and what you're capable of doing at any given time. And that gives you lots of cool, micro, meaty decisions that are still intuitive and fun and don't bog the game down. That said, the specificity of this game will be a turnoff for a lot of people. This is a direct conflict, head-to-head, combat, dexterity game for only 2 players. That is best when played repeatedly by people of equal interest, developing similar levels of skill. Any one of those factors may stop a person from being interested in a game, and the combination of them all means that FlickFleet is pretty niche. But what it does so well. The best thing about FlickFleet is its immediacy. Not only are the glorious highs of winning and the hilarious lows of failure immediate, but every time that I've played this game, no matter who I've played it with, we've always wanted to play again right away, win or lose, not only because it takes only about 10 to 20 minutes to play, usually on the shorter side of that, but because you immediately gain some information and you want to apply that on each successive game. Playing 4 or 5 times in a row means you kind of develop a sort of interior meta that I really love. Now, the specificity of this game that I was mentioning earlier, that is going to affect whether some people even sit down at the table with this, and I think that's their loss. Also, there are going to be times where just hilarious and crazy things happen as a result of this being a dexterity game, where ships crash into each other or the deciding shot is one that should have never happened, not in a million years, yet it did happen. And some people are going to be turned off by that. But because of its pace, because of its light nature, it makes that funny instead of frustrating, or at least for me it does. So overall, I dig it. The dexterity is really well married to the mechanics, making it intuitive and overall elevating the theme, making it feel like a broader game than it actually is. So if you are into space combat games, or you like small games that feel big, or maybe you are just a little bit dex curious, then I recommend you check out FlickFleet by Eurydice Games. Thanks for watching. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald. If you enjoyed this video, we have all kinds of other reviews, interviews, and recommendations via writing, podcast, and video here on our channel and website cardboardherald.com. Our content is audience supported, so if you want to show your support, please visit our Patreon. Thank you so much for watching. This has been the Cardboard Herald.